Hey guys, how's it going? I wanted to jump on today and talk about a topic that we get a bucket load of questions about. It's probably our third most common. We go back pain, then like kind of shoulder and neck pain, but they're kind of interrelated. So today we wanted to just go through neck pain, how you know you've got, like obviously you know you've got it. A lot of people sort of feel like they get tight through their upper traps or suboccipitals. So they'll get like pain through like the back of their head, and when you press in through there, it becomes a little bit tight and sore. And so another really common symptom that you'll get from a tight neck if you don't actually get neck pain will be headaches. So headaches that come up and over the back of the head, they're going to be coming more from your suboccipitals. Pain that comes sort of like up the back of the neck and then around to the eyebrows is typically going to be a referral pattern for your tight upper traps. And so today we're going to go through a couple of short-term releases and short-term exercises that you can do. And then after we do them, we're going to open up your thoracic or your mid-back, which is generally going to be sort of like more of a mid-term to long-term solution. And then finally, we're going to work on getting your core working a little bit better. And so what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of times your neck pain actually comes from sort of like a weak or lazy core. I use those terms very loosely. I don't think they're ever weak or lazy. It's just they're generally not working from a good position because of your posture and because you tend to use some muscles more than the others and you don't have a lot of movement variability. So basically, the reason why you get neck pain is if you get really stressed. Like the common thing is people say, oh, I hold a lot of stress in my neck. And so it's usually because when you become stressed, your breathing pattern becomes all sort of upper trappy and upper necky. And so ideally, we want to be breathing through the diaphragm. So, and you can see the difference that it makes when I breathe through here. These guys are almost often relaxed all the time. Whereas if I'm breathing, there's a lot of work going on up here. So obviously we want to do some stuff medium to long term to address this area, and these guys working better so that we can take a lot of stress off them. So like we mentioned before, the main culprits that are going to give you neck pain or sort of headaches or neck tightness, anything like that jazz, is going to be either your upper traps, so these guys here, which we spoke about briefly just then with breathing, and then also suboccipitals. And so suboccipitals get tight because if you sort of like, if your posture's a little bit off, and you sort of like create a little bit of scissoring like this, then all of a sudden you can see I'm standing nice and upright. As soon as I scissor, my neck starts to jut forward. And so that jutting forward puts extra pressure on sort of like the sides of the neck or your scalene muscles. And then obviously it's also going to put tension through those suboccipitals. So they become really tight and they don't want to stretch and relax. And then that's why you get your tension. So I know you guys like the education, but I know you're also into a little bit more of the releases and stuff. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab a ball and we're going to get that into our upper traps. So literally grab a wall, grab a like doorway. We're just going to pop the ball sort of like up in the neck. So it'll be sort of just in that area for you guys. And then the way that you get in there is you kind of lean forwards. And so we're going to just then, once we've got that, you can dig around, roll around, find a few spots. My general tip, it can be a little bit slippery. So you can use the opposite hand just to hold it in place. Make sure you find a nice sweet spot. Then we're just going to hold for 30 seconds there. After about 30 seconds, you'll feel it sort of start to ease off or loosen up. And then we're just going to nod the head up and down, or sort of nod down into that opposite hip. And you should feel like a nice little stretch. We're going to do like 3 to 5 sweeps in any spots there. And we're spending about a minute on each side for this. So if you really like, if it's really tight, you'll spend 30 seconds plus a minute. If it's not that tight, you've been doing it for a while, the 30 seconds of pausing will be included in that minute. So we just find like that nice tight sore spot. Then we're just going to add in some little head movements. And again, like you're probably only doing like 3 to 5 sweeps with that head before you then move into a different spot. And so after we've done that, should feel nice and loose. You might even notice that bit of headache coming around the eyes starts to ease off. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to get into the suboccipitals. So I'm just going to move the camera a little bit because we want to get down on the floor now. Perfect. So again, you can use tennis ball or lacrosse ball. I personally, for the suboccipitals, I like to use a little peanut just because it's easier and it doesn't zip around. You can grab 2 tennis balls, just chuck them in a sock and tie it off. Does the trick. Or if you've only got 1 ball, then you can just use it on either side. So for the purpose of the video, I'm going to use a peanut and we'll just go both sides. And then from there, you can just put pressure in. Like, it's pretty obvious you'll find like tight sore spots in through there. And again, we're adding like 30 seconds worth of downward pressure. After then, you should start to feel like it eases off a little bit. And you can start to then add some movement or layer some movement on top of that. So then from there, we're just going to roll up and down. And then you can even just do a little bit of like rotation side to side to bias one side. Then obviously if you've got 1 ball in there, you can hold it with like the opposite hand. And then from there, you're just adding that movement in. And you can actually do it and trace it all the way down the neck, just adding a few little nods on each position there. And you'll be probably surprised at how stiff and tight and sore that gets. And so after we've gone through and released that off, then the next trick is always going to be to add some activations. So the releases are really nice. They work temporarily. But if you want sort of any long-term or medium-term solutions, then you obviously want to be adding in some activations from there. So we're just going to roll onto your belly. And from there, we'll go elbows out to the sides, make a little diamond with a fist. We're going to let the head rest there. Then we're going to press the elbows in, then spread the elbows out to create sort of like a bit of tension through that mid-back. Then from there, we're just going to lift up, keeping that chin tucked. And so as you lift up, you should feel like you're stretching out the back of that neck, and you should feel like the upper back then just starts to get a nice little stretch out with that. And we can do 10 of those. If that's feeling good, then we can just add in a little rotation. So you look into each armpit, come back down. Head up, look into one armpit, look into the other armpit, look to the center, come back down. And then when you do this, you just also want to make sure that you're keeping that chin nice and tucked. We're focusing on looking down at the same spot as we lift the head up. We don't want to lift up and crank on the neck and then add rotation in there. So that's a nice little one. You can go through and you can do like 2 sets of 10, 2 sets of 15 of that exercise until you start to feel it release and relax. And then your more medium to long-term solution is going to be getting in and doing some upper back or upper thoracic mobility. So, and core stability. So with this one, we're just going to jump in. We'll go foam roller underneath the ribs. We roll up and down. I think most people have had a go at this one, but what a lot of people forget to do is to then add movement. So then from there, we're just going to arch back over the head, back over the foam roller, sorry, and come back up. And then we'll wiggle up. We'll go a little bit higher, also into that mid back, and then we'll go a little bit higher again to underneath, like the shoulders or the neck, and we're just adding in movement. So flexion and extension, or sort of that bending and extending, they're 2 of the movements that the upper thoracic does. The other thing that it does primarily is rotation. So then we can roll onto our side. We do open the book, close the book. If you're a little bit tight, you can pop that bottom hand on top of the knees so that you keep them down. And with all these, with the thoracic foam rolling, I'd be spending, a minute to a minute and a half there. And then with these, open the book, close the books, you're probably looking at 2 sets of 10 2 sets of 15. When you're doing it, I just had a nice big pop because I finished at the gym this morning. So it's feeling a little bit stiff and tight, but you might get a few pops and cracks. I wouldn't be too alarmed. They just show that you're starting to get some movement in through there. And then once we've finished with that one, then we're going to do what we call like a snow angel. So from there, stay in the same position, pop that hand on top of the knee. Then we're just going to have that other hand sort of like rotate up and around, back down, check the back pocket for change, and then roll up, come back over. And so as you do this, we'll do 10 sweeps up and back. You want to be trying to keep your hand on the floor as much as possible, or for as long as possible, or as close as possible if you can. So don't be disheartened if you can't keep it on the floor the whole way. This is a really good test of upper back and shoulder mobility all in one. And so if we roll over and we do it on the other side, we go up, hand stays in contact as long as possible, and then you have a little coordinated point. If you find there's a particular sticky point where you go through and do this, like you get to here and then you can't really go much further, you have to kind of like clunk or it's not as smooth, you can just spend time in that transition point and work on that until it becomes comfortable and it becomes a bit smoother, and then you continue on with the rest of that movement. Perfect. And then the last thing that we said, so obviously that's adding a bit more mobility through our back. And then the last thing we want to do is we want to get the core fired up. So a couple of things we're looking for the core is more your internal and external obliques. So the ones that run from one side to the other. And so the easiest way to do this is just like some plank shoulder taps. So we'll go on the knees from there, letting the hips sink down until you feel your core sort of on. We add like a tap. So 1, 2, 3, come across, 1, 2, 3, come down, 1, 2, 3, and hold that position, 1, 2, 3. And you should feel as you take away one of the support arms or legs, you really feel that core engage as we go through. And then if we're looking at it front on, we're going to try and minimize that shift through the torso. So we don't want to see a big rocking effect. We want to try and keep that as stable as possible as we go through and do them. Then we're going to look at adding in some side bridges. So side bridge from here, we'll start off knees bent to roughly 90 degrees, and then hand on hip. We're just going to lift up, push forwards and back and down, up, forwards, back, down, up, forwards, back, down. A good little tip with this, if you start to feel it a lot in your shoulders, you need to hoik your hips up higher so you're putting more pressure in through your knee. And so if you get those hips up higher, all of a sudden you start to bias those obliques, and it takes a lot of pressure off the shoulder. Again, something like this, just to keep it simple, we're doing 2 sets of 10 reps. And then we want to add progressions in, obviously. So we'll go hips up, hips forward. We're going to hold that position. Now we're just going to add in a little knee lift. So we'll do 10 knee lifts. And now we're starting to get those obliques firing and the glutes firing all at once. So we're working them isometrically. They're staying under tension while we get used to using that knee. And then obviously we're going to do both sides. So from here, we go hips up, hips forward, feel those obliques on, and then we're going to add the knee lift. And then finally, to get it really functional and starting to look like stuff we're going to do in day-to-day life, we're going to go same setup as what we had before, but this time the top knee, goes behind the back heel. We're going to lift up and we're going to kick through, back, kick through, back, kick through. And so now we're teaching those obliques and glutes to fire reasonably quickly and whilst we're stabilizing with the other side. And again, 2 sets of 10, starts to get the blood pumping, gets the sweat going. So we start there, coming up, shoot through, up, forwards, knee through, up, forwards, knee through. And so obviously we want to make sure that you've got good glute and good core firing when we're doing this more dynamic movement, but it starts to layer on and it starts to look a bit more like walking because we're using the right same movement patterns as we would when we're walking. So that's how we go through and we do short-term, medium, and sort of more long-term relief for your neck pain. Give us a go. If you have any questions, let us know in the comments below. Or alternatively, let us know what stage you're currently at and how it's all going. Cheers, guys.